And so, there's so many other mediums out there, and whether that's museums, operatic, symphonic music, whatever, you can find, these things be very valuable, I think, in your growth. When you look at cultural arts, as a medium, it teaches you a whole lot. If you have that artistic passion, it will unlock that for you. They even use it in therapeutic practices. That's what we do at the sheriff's office. So for kids who have high anxiety, who don't know how to cope, we give them journals, or we allow them to paint and do things like that, which can create an environment in which they can alleviate that stress. Some of us do that today. If you get upset, you start writing stuff down. But it's really just continuing in that form to make it a place where it's a safe space, but also giving kids the opportunity to realize if you are creative, what can you do with that? And that conversation usually isn't had amongst minority kids, students, that there's a huge career in the arts. And it's not just being a performer or an entertainer. If you draw, if you sketch, if you paint, there are paintings going, just on the average for, $10,000, $12,000, $50,000 at galleries across this country every day. And that's from folk with minimal talent. So imagine when you're looking at someone who becomes one of those great artists, and your paintings while you're still alive, hopefully you're not dead when they start selling for $100 million or whatever, but if you're still alive, you can sell a painting, for $2 million, $3 million. But the other side of that is there's another business to that, which is the person who owns the gallery. Things that we don't think about. Instead of being an artist, you can own a gallery and put the paintings in your space, sell the paintings for a commission price, and make a ton of money doing that. Even managing an artist. If you know a young man or young woman who's very talented, you can take that person and say, hey, listen, I'm going to guide your career, and whatever you decide to do, however you get paid, I'll take a percentage of that. So, there are so many great careers in the arts that I think people just miss out on because they only think about being the entertainer or the person up front, where there's a ton of folks behind the scenes. And so, you just have to determine what that is. My undergrad degree here was in communications. So I started out wanting to do, journalism, TV news, and this is at a time when, of course, people were still buying newspapers, and before, so you're talking about like in the 90s, you didn't have laptops, the internet all day long, cell phones that gave you all the information you needed. So folk had to, routinely pick up a hard copy newspaper. And in our classes, our professors required us to every morning read the newspaper, read the news. And so, I think those life lessons in there create habits, and they created tons of habits for me, which were, one, you got to be on time, you got to be up in the morning, you want to make sure you know what's happening in the world as you're waking up. You don't want to be blind to what's going on outside of just Johnson C. Smith. It's a huge community, it's a huge world, and when you look at all that is happening, especially in Charlotte, outside Charlotte, you all have to be very informed about what's happening. You all are the next line of young adult, young thinkers, young minds that are going to come out of this university and can create change if you decide you want to. I look at it as it's a real choice factor. You can choose to do stuff, or you can choose not to do stuff. It really is that simple. I think people make a lot more out of it than what it is. You are all bright, intelligent, you can make your own choices. You can show up to class and not show up to class, do the work, not do the work. You can get up in the morning, not get up in the morning. You can pay attention, not pay attention. It really don't matter to the person outside of you. So when you think about it, it really has to come down to you deciding how good, how great, how average, whatever you want to be. That's where you have to make a determination. Because no one else can make you do that. No one else can make you better than what you already need, what you know you need to be. And you shouldn't have to want to rely on someone else to put a battery in your back to make you better or make you get up in the morning or do things. So I think when I look at the things that I've been able to do, it just comes down to one, you have to learn to manage your time. Number one, we all have the same 24 hours in a day. I work a full-time job, wrote a dissertation, started a podcast, still sit on the board of directors for tons of museums in this community. I just chop my day up and do everything I need to do and think about it in that realm. How successful do I want to be? And that has nothing to do with anyone else. And you've got to kind of encapsulate yourself in that same thought process. What is it that you're looking to do? What is it that you want to do? And how good do you want to be at doing it? And I think that starts that process. And when you think about, again, where you want to end up, you want to always position yourself around people who are doing similar things as you and can help you do that much better. And so, I think about the time that I spent here at Smith, whether it was with, everyone knows No Grease Barbershop. So, Damian Johnson was in school, he was a year ahead of me, so Dame pledged me, Dame's an alpha. And so, when I was talking to Dame, so you're talking about having conversations almost 20 plus years ago, and Damian and Jermaine both knew they wanted to own barbershops. I mean, they came from Buffalo just with the strict intent to own barbershops. And here they were, 18, 19, talking about this plan, and the rest of us sitting around like, okay, yeah, whatever. Getting your hair cut in Barry, and New Res, and Liston, and that's what they did. And they put the work in, and they put the time in, and then you fast forward, it wasn't an overnight success, as people might think that, hey, shop here, shop there, they're down in Atlanta now. That's 20 plus years of hard work, of them grinding it out, knowing what they wanted, putting the plan in play, and continue to move forward around good people. And so, on top of that, one of the other line brothers, Brian Johnson, I remember Brian on the block, and BJ would talk all the time about getting his PhD and running a university. You fast forward 20 years, and then BJ gets the job at Tuskegee, he's running Tuskegee University. So, these are the same folk that come out of this university that do amazing things. But they knew what they wanted to do. I mean, they would literally say it, and then they would put that plan in action. But they didn't need somebody to tell them, hey, listen, you gotta wake up tomorrow, man, you need to do this work, or you need to pay attention, or you need to link up with so-and-so, or you need to have this conversation. If people told them what to do, or they gave them advice, they took it, because they understood it. They weren't trying to block stuff out, or feel like, well, I don't have to do that, I'm me, and I'm this, that, and the third. They took it in. They became huge sponges of information. And that's how you really win this game, man. You have to get as much information as possible, and take it, flip it, and utilize it for your betterment. Because at the end of the day, man, what are you doing all this for? Smith has cost you guys a lot of money. When I went to Smith, it was $8,000. It's what, about 20 grand now?
Was that the same, like inflation, was it about the same?
Right, since the years I left, it's been a $1,000 increase every year. So you're talking about almost, what, 20 grand?
It's hard.
No, it's more than that now?
That's
how much?
33.
Yeah, good luck. But I mean, that's a lot of money. That's a huge investment. For 4 years, or 5, or 6, however long it takes you to get out of here. To spend that kind of money and then leave out and not know what you want to do, or spend that kind of money and waste it and say, well, I got that degree, now I'm not going to use it. That takes a lot, man, to really make that determined. Because it is a huge investment. And just like any investment, and anybody here studying marketing and business, or should know business principles. So with any investment, what are you expecting? A return. That's just basic business. You put money in to get money out. That's all that is. And if you look at Smith as an investment, essentially one day you got to get that 32 grand back out. And it's not just going to be 32 grand, because if you got loans, there's going to be interest on those loans, so there's going to be more money on top of that. So whatever that is, you got to get your money back out of that. So who's the principal problem? You. And if you're not working towards making yourself, so the biggest investment you can make is in what? Yourself. And if you're not willing to make that investment, that's just lost money. I mean, that's any business. That's just straight across the board. And so you want to make sure you're looking at this opportunity that you have, this time that you have, as pretty much a short-term investment to make it a long-term investment. Because you're going to have a short amount of, you get a window here about 4 years, and you're going to graduate. Because you will graduate. I will promise you that. If you stay in Smith long enough, whether you did the work, didn't do the work, if you stay here long enough, someone's going to pass you, you're going to get out of here, and you're going to get a degree. That's a given. What comes next? And if you don't want to take a job, that's fine. If you want to start a job, that's fine too. If you want to go to grad school, that's fine, that's more money. But just understand, all this has to make sense for you. You just can't sit around thinking, okay, you know what, I got today, I got next week. And while you do have some of that time is going to dissipate faster than you know. This thing will come to an end. And then you're going to be out there on the other side, coming to homecoming, hanging out, seeing folk that you graduated with or folk who dropped out, you know, things like that, going back home. It's a life cycle. We've all done it. And I can fondly remember going home in my time that, you know, I would go home, you know, this is 94, 95, go home in the summer, and the same dudes on the block were the same dudes there when I left. And then I graduated, and I stayed down here, and I lived with Dame, I lived with Jermaine, and we would have these conversations, and I would go back home, and let's say go back home in 2001, guess who's still on the block? Same dudes. So you got to figure it out, what it is you're trying to do, and how you want to get from point A to point B to point C to point D. And you have to be better than. And I know, you know, we consistently have this conversation amongst our peers and ourselves, but out there, you've got to be much better than everybody else. There are still folk who confuse John C. Smith with Johnson & Wales. So as you walk out of here with a degree from Smith, people are like, oh, where is that? That was always one of those things. I applied for jobs as soon as I left Smith, and folk in Charlotte would say, well, where is that? It's right up the damn street. But they don't know that, or the experience they've had with Smith students was terrible. There are companies in Charlotte now that still won't take Smith interns. Lowe's is one of them. Lowe's corporate. They've had such a terrible experience with students from Smith that they won't even bother to interview them for internships, unless you know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. So that speaks volumes about folk that come out, or when folk get to the spot